you, so we'll get underway. So welcome everyone to this morning's meeting. Just some attendance notes. We've got Councillor Gladden joining online is with Paul Speedy and Miles O'Connell from Bangkok. So they're all joining us online. We have no apologies. Are there any declarations of interest that need to be raised that we're not aware of? No. There's no matters lying on the table. And no public forum. So I'll move that the confirmation of today's agenda. Are we all set? All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. The next item is the confirmation of the minutes from the last meeting, which is on the 4th of December. So we're going to move those minutes. Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Oh.
Thanks. I just have a correction. Is now the right time, or do I need to do that after it's been moved?
We'll take it now.
Just the date. The date's wrong. It's September and it should be December. At least on the copy I got.
Page 8, 60 paragraph. Where?
Just at the top of the minutes. Oh, sorry, Lisa, where it says just sets out the date that the minutes, it just must have carried over from the template or something from before. It looked like it was the minutes for September. Unless I was reading the wrong thing.
Top of page 8 under confirmation of public minutes. Just yeah.
It was confirming minutes.
No, that was confirming previous minutes.
It was confirming the previous.
So I've missed that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. No, talking about the previous minutes.
Thanks. Apologies.
So you're moving that, Nikki?
Yeah, I can move that.
Okay. Second, I think. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a resolution required the public part of the minutes of the meeting. It's approved, so that's done. Thank you. Right, Gareth.
With your permission, I'd like to start with introducing Ian Dunbar, who's joined us at the table. Ian Dunbar is the business process team lead at QLDC. The reason that he's joining us is that he is a member of our risk strategy group. We thought it would be useful for the committee, given the item that is on the agenda around the risk management policy that you're considering today, to have a member of the group. The risk strategy group, as we have previously talked to, considers various components of the risk management policy from a context of organisational strategy, and played an important part in reviewing the risk appetite model that we have previously presented to Council via a workshop. The agenda today is an update on essentially a number of elements of the work that the risk and assurance team are undertaking. It is slightly different from previous reports. We've changed the structure based on feedback, and we have incorporated a new attachment B, which hopefully the committee will find useful. Attachment B, as requested, is a summary of, I suppose, key metrics in relation to our current risk register, including giving you information around high risks that are on the risk register, and that includes any high risk, both at Tier 1 and Tier 2. And I suppose the main component of the report today is to recommend to you an update to our risk management policy, which is version 4. The risk management policy is attached as attachment C. And last week we discussed the content of the changes with Council via a workshop. So some key issues or some key matters that were raised at the workshop that I just thought I'd touch on there was some discussion around the 3 lines model and roles and responsibilities as outlined in the risk management policy. Question was raised around the appropriateness of sign-off of the internal audit programme. Our policy currently has sign-off by the Chief Executive, and then that programme is considered by the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee, as noted. The recommendation was that we move to approval via the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee, with the Chief Executive making the recommendation. So the workshop took that as an action to be considered during the review of terms of reference of this committee. So that's where it stands. And the policy is as per the one that was presented to the workshop last week.
Thank you. So that was feedback that you and I, more use, Bill. Because I think figure 1 is quite a confusing diagram because of the different solid arrows going in different directions. I think if that's where we end up in terms of the policy, that the audit committee basically signs off on the internal audit reviews on the recommendation of management. Obviously, the CEO will then need to implement that, so that's where the accountability lies. And the critical thing is that the audit, those internal audit reviews come through to the audit committee for recommendation of council based on management feedback on each of the recommendations. So I think as long as there's transparency and appropriate scrutiny by the audit committee, then I think it's part of those checks and balances. So I think that sounds like a good improvement. That's where we're going. Yep. Anything? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't quite get all that. So what are we not changing? We're not suggesting we're changing the delegation to approval rather than recommendation. Is that what you're saying?
No, what Gary's saying is that's the recommendation of that when we review the terms of reference for the committee.
Oh, for the committee.
That will be included. That will be included then. So
that's not,
so
not relevant at the moment for the policy. We've got to sort out the delegation.
Yeah. So the key thing is what the timing of the review of the terms of reference, so that things are done on a timely basis. So certainly for the next triennium, we want the terms of reference to be fit for purpose. So I'm not sure just on the timing of that, Gary.
Through you, Chair, happy to respond to that. And just to confirm, yes, we intend to do that for the next triennium, and it's a process that's underway at the moment. So
will that be the next audit committee meeting or the October?
I think it'll probably be the December one. I'd have to have a look at timing, so I don't have the timing of the meetings in front of me, but I suspect it would be the December one before we have the new terms of reference implemented.
Which will tie into the first meetings of the new council.
Yeah, the new council will be after the first meeting. Yep. Anything else you'd like to raise?
Happy to take the report as read. Obviously, through you, Chair, happy to respond to any questions, as is Ian on behalf of the risk strategy group.
Okay. I'll open it up now for questions. What was that?
Councillor Glenn has raised.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yep. Vicky?
I sort of pulled it down because I thought I'd let somebody else go first. So that would make more sense. I've got a few questions.
So you're offering for others to go first? Or you,
well, I just thought I've got a few, otherwise I'm going to take up all the time and they may get asked by somebody else, so it might just be better to let others chip in.
far away, Nikki.
Okay, thanks, guys. Yeah, look, I also raised through that workshop just the concern about the independence of that third line. I've done a little bit of research on the third line and its intent, which is supposedly to be the eyes and ears of governance, being the council. And of course, the suggestion is that we've delegated some of that to the AFRC. Sorry, this is a question. So how have you gone about ensuring that we have done everything possible to maintain the independence of that third line?
Through you, Chair, happy to respond to that question. Obviously, changing the reporting line in terms of who signs off the internal audit programme and also who signs off and approves the audit reports when they come through. The intent is that in terms of reference, consider that I'm not sure what else we could add into that framework that provides, from my perspective, clear independence of that role.
Okay, I might just run a few suggestions past you for your thoughts in that case. So in terms of time without management in the room for governance, has that been considered? And these are suggestions that have come from the people developing the model. So
Happy to respond to that question. So we've been through the model. We've been through the model as a risk strategy group. We considered the recommendations from the Institute of Internal Auditors. My personal view is that the process that we have in place is relevant for us in a local government environment. I'm not sure that there needs to be any additional measures, but happy to take recommendations from this room away for consider, and we can consider that through terms of reference.
well, I think it would need to go into the policy itself, just to clarify, as Bill mentioned, the lines in the model could be interpreted in a number of ways, and unless it's written into the policy, then I think leaving everything to the terms of reference down the track for me is problematic. I want to make sure at this point that that model has the right level of independence. Looking
Mr. Chair, we have
So,
a question.
just sorry,
Yeah,
I can carry on with questions. I'm just going to run a few other things past you, if that's okay, Gareth. So that was the first one. The other one was just around the resourcing of it. At the moment, it's got a line down that the chief executive is resourcing that team. Just in terms of creating independence around that, wondering what we could put in place in terms of the council, because the council obviously sets the budgets through the LTP, but we often don't drill into specific operational funds for different parts of the council. Was it considered how we could address that through the LTP to create some independence around the resourcing of that unit? Sorry, thank you, Bill.
That's a good question, Nikki. Typically, what most audit committees do is, in signing off on a rolling 3-year series of reviews under the internal audit program, also go through and assess the resourcing required to do that. So there's probably something, if this audit committee signs off on the internal audit program, they could also test whether there's enough resources to actually complete it to the appropriate standard. So those two could be linked together, and it's just standard practice for most audit committees when they sign off on programs. And typically they sign off on a 3-year rolling program. So at the start of the next triennium, it is possible to sign off on a 3-year program of internal audit reviews, which isn't necessarily locked in concrete because things do change.
Yeah.
And so you can adapt it, but at least there's a 3-year profile of reviews and resourcing.
Thank you, Bill. And just the other question in terms of putting this as a suggestion, the decision to escalate matters of significance at the moment sits with the chief executive, and I just thought it would be an easy option to make the decision to escalate to the AFRC independent, so that it sits with the assurance lead. So just thoughts on whether you considered that, I guess.
Happy to respond. I mean, ultimately, we did review, as I said earlier, the 3 lines model. I think all of these things will need to be reviewed in line with the terms of reference. So just so I'm clear, obviously the policy would need to be updated when we have the new terms of reference in place. We're not proposing that we maintain the current policy after the terms of reference have been updated. So happy that that's considered at the same time in terms of reference, and then it would need to be, as you rightly point out, referenced in the policy, and we'll make sure that those amendments are made where they're appropriate.
Thank you. Yeah, my concern is simply that if we don't recommend it now and have it in writing as an amendment to the recommended motion, that these things will be done through the terms of reference, and that could be lost with a new council. So I think it's really important not to just assume that it will be done. I'd either want them to go in, but when we agreed it, or to have an amendment that said these things need to be done via the terms of reference at this time.
Okay, any other comments?
Questions?
I don't have any questions. Oh,
I've got a question.
Lisa, you go first. Yep.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for your work on this and the workshop the other day, because there was some good explanation that came through that, and in going away and thinking more on the three line of defence model, it really helped me to clarify that into those sections of operational and then our risk management and compliance at our level 2 and our third level being this internal audit. My question is, we form part of that third level, right? As far as this committee with our independent members and bringing that independent oversight to the internal audit at line 3. Is that right? Is that where this committee kind of sits within the model?
Happy to
Line 3.
respond to that through your chair. So yes, this committee receives the third line audit reports. As we have just discussed, terms of reference are going to review whether they approve those reports. But irrespective, absolutely, this committee plays a really important role in that third line.
In that third line. So we've got our 3 independent members to help give that objectivity to things that are coming through this as well. So that gave me some reassurance. Another question I have, I suppose, is around the emerging risks. And I'm thinking a lot about, we get really in detail on some of them, like climate change. We've got tourism management as an acknowledged risk that impacts everything, our housing development. How well does the model respond to crises, sort of things just being thrown at it, like significant events or natural disasters and things like that? It's such a bureaucratic process, and one of the risks I see in three lines of defence is a little bit that we can get into ruling by committee, and how do we end up with acting in the real world where it's not just about reports and that's where I think I really do prefer some of the accountability to sit within the organisation rather than coming back to this committee, and I want to understand how we stay agile and able to respond to the emergent things that come at this. Yeah, sorry,
Again,
big long convoluted question.
I think it gets back to what Bill said,
Yeah.
is that it's got to be flexible enough that when things do come along, that we can pick those up. Even though you may have cemented, the next 12 months. I know in commercial audit committees that I'm involved in, we do change.
Yeah.
And have the ability to change the priorities as well.
And seeing how often it's happening around going in and holding those risk meetings, or when things go down. I assume there's like situational briefings that captures it. Yeah.
Happy to respond to that, Chair. That would be helpful. I suppose in terms of the three-line model, and we discussed this at the workshop last week, we have two components to our third line model. The first of those is around the structured audits. The second of those is around our fraud control plan, where we review and Mariano picks up any potential risks, and we report those through to the committee. We did flag at the workshop that the existing model, where we're able to change our audit program seeking direction by the chief executive, does enable us to respond to those emerging areas that we feel we need to delve into from an audit perspective. I think it's really important that we understand that when we review and consider how we implement that model in practice through the terms of reference and an update to the risk management policy. And then I suppose your second part of your question around risk management, as the committee are aware, I meet with each tier 3 manager and relevant members from their team quarterly. We go through emerging risks at that time, and that's why I haven't gone through the update in terms of risk numbers and where they sit. Every time I report to you, that changes fairly significantly because of those conversations. I think we have a reasonably good model for picking up emerging risks. Through that process, we have discussions about new risks where we think they sit every time we have one of those workshops.
Right. And that would also pick up and clarify any confusion around regulatory changes or our financial swap outs, those sorts of things, just constantly horizon scanning.
Yeah, again, through you, Chair, we also do a 6-monthly update to our compliance obligations register, which we again touched on last time we updated that, which was I think a couple of months ago. So we're doing a constant horizon scan in terms of legislation changes and then talking to those managers around what that means in terms of their risk management methods and mitigation planning.
Thanks, through the chair, thank you.
Right.
Just to add to that, councillor, and it's inherent in, I suppose, understanding that we live in a risk ecosystem. So the policy is part, I mean, the organisation, as with every organisation, lives with risks every day. And you know, we have operational processes to deal with those. We have all our risks have basically risk and consequence outcomes, and we have, you know, post-intervention risk ratings. So, you know, there is a whole ecosystem which deals with actually everything that happens in that council.
Yes.
And then obviously in terms of this, the right escalations if they are required.
Thank you. Lyle.
Oh, I had never questioned,
Yeah, okay.
just a comment that was at some stage.
Okay, well, I intend to move the motion.
Oh, second.
Got a seconder?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, just a comment, after the workshop we had with council, Mr. Chair, the raise about the model, and like councillor Glading and that, I've done some further research on it, looking into it a bit more detail, because I wasn't that familiar with me, but I'm pretty comfortable the way it sits, and I was just looking further down into the, I know we're going to be reviewing the delegation and the new training, which we just talked about, and that would lead to an update to the policy. But I think it does drive the point that this committee, the communication with the full council, a lot of this information is actually in the quarterly report that goes to council, but in the delegation there for the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee, the chairperson will report back to the council with recommendation on this committee to the council meeting following each committee meeting, and we do report recommendations. But I just raised the point that maybe if there are some real issues or red flags raised at this point, that would add that into the recommendation to council to take a view on. So that I think we got that process in place, and just made sure we did put anything on the table that we did want to put the council through this meeting through you, Mr. Chair, would be a good way to go. Yeah.
I'd just like to make an amendment to the motion, Stuart, or just signal that I'd like to.
hold on, we've just got one more speaker, I think. Lisa.
Thank you. Sorry, Nikki, through the chair for me. Yeah, I just want to make a comment about how far this has come, right? I think, what was it, 2018 or something? No, we didn't have risk, even policies or management frameworks or anything in the system. And to look at a model like 3 lines of defence and how you've implemented it. And I also commend the thinking that you're starting to do around nodes of risk and gathering our different scenarios together. But I really like what this does. It gives us some really clear accountability. And the risk oversight is just so much better than we've had. And to see that continual enhancement to the risk culture, you know, that there's regular checks, there's regular reporting, there's a framework to follow. I just think that this is there's going to be iterations of, as we've heard, it's going to get better, we're going to get more aware of how to respond and mitigate and eliminate. But where we've come from, where we weren't even identifying or assessing our own frameworks, I'd just like to commend how far it's come. So thank you through the chair for letting me make that comment.
Thank you, Lisa, and I endorse those words. Yes, thank you. Okay, there's a motion. Nikki, you wanting to move an amendment?
Well, look, yeah, I just would like to put that into writing, so in the resolution. So look, happy to changes in wording, but something along the lines of when the terms of reference of the AFRC are agreed in the new triennium, the risk policy will be reviewed at the same time, and the recommendations of this committee will be considered by the full council.
Okay, we've got an amendment. We've got a seconder for the amendment.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't actually get all that.
So what was it?
Is there a way to put it up online.
Yeah, so what we've spoken about in terms of reviewing the terms of reference, and then Nikki wants that put in part of the motion.
So just noting that there will be a review of is it terms of reference or delegations? I'm not sure.
I think what I heard councillor Manning say, and Nikki can correct me if I get it wrong, was that as part of reviewing updating the policy and reviewing the terms of reference for the AFRC committee, that they be done together or at the same time, and then reported through to the new council with recommendations from the committee.
Exactly. So look, I could read it out slowly for Jane if you like. So when the terms of reference and delegations, just because you put them in there, sorry, when the terms of reference of the AFRC are agreed in the new triennium, the risk policy.
Will be updated accordingly.
Hang on, I was waiting for Jane, sorry.
Yeah.
The risk policy will be reviewed at that time, and the recommendations of this committee made in discussion, I think, because we haven't made any recommendations, will be considered by the full council. Happy for any changes to that.
Management of risk management risk management policy. Yeah.
Correct. And I don't know if you want the word recommendations in there. It's an interesting way of putting it. The matters raised by this committee in discussion might be a better way to put it.
And the method raised.
Yeah.
Raised by this committee.
Could I suggest, because it's about the 3 lines, that we narrow it down to amending the 3 lines model?
I would keep it more generic. If you say you get a stand on to the recommendation too, that note, we do all this noting, there will be a review of the terms of reference or whatever, and the new training, which will lead to a review and update of the risk policy. Now, how we do it at the time, obviously there'll be discussion and there'll be recommendations to council, but so I don't know, you've got to be careful, you get too wordy, and that's my view. Just get more generic, and you wanted to go more specific. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
I'm happy. As the mover of the motion, I would be, and no one has seconded it yet, but I would be happy for after raise the matters relating to the 3rd line of defence model and the roles in that role table. I don't know how you want to put that. If you want to narrow it down, Catherine.
It's only just so that because you mentioned that you didn't want to lose that context. So if this is a way of documenting that. The risk management policy, including the
3 lines.
3 lines of defence.
Can I just make one point? We have chosen to drop the word defence from our 3 lines model.
Okay.
So that's recommended by the Institute of Internal Auditors. So if we want to be
So 3 lines.
consistent with our policy.
And look, just to be clear, it's not just the model as in the diagram. We would need to look at the roles listed in the policy. So including the 3 lines model and the roles listed in the policy, or better wording if someone has it.
That's when you're reviewing the policy.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I'm saying. You're going to be specific, or do you want to be?
That is already in the purpose of the risk management policy, is to outline responsibilities associated with risk management, governance, risk ownership, and risk treatment. Yeah, I know where you're coming from, but I don't think we need to get too ready on that.
No.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm somewhat I mean, it's an interesting resolution, and it talks about review at the time and the matters raised by this committee in discussion. That's a very opening, that's relying presumably on someone's memory of what was discussed or who's doing what. That doesn't really give us a lot of structured guidance.
It'll be a new committee.
And it'll be, yeah, so that's very open-ended. Everybody's saying, well, whatever I thought of at some point could be part of that discussion. I think that's not what's intended.
Should be more.
Yeah.
With respect,
So
this
the
is a
will be
recorded.
reviewed.
This is a recorded meeting, so everything that came up will be there. It's very easy to go back to a meeting and just note down the matters that were raised and to put those matters to the full council. But look, I would like more structure too,
Needs to be
but it's
timed up.
difficult. It's difficult to do that in a meeting, and this is a compromise, I guess, on my part to agreeing the model.
The
but
outcome we're
I-
sorry, Nikki. I don't want
No,
to
it's
speak.
fine.
I think the outcome we're seeking is that the risk management policy and the model are reviewed in the same timeline, in the same time period. So as long as those things happen together, then that current committee and council can make the
Yes, make the
determinations around.
Yep.
We just don't want them out of sync as they are.
Well,
currently.
that's correct.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no, look, we've had some discussion today, and some things have been raised that were not brought by the council, and the risk is that they get lost. So I think it's important to direct people back to this discussion so that they're not lost.
Yeah. Nikki, I think we go back to the opening line that came from Gareth, and that wording should be included, not what we've got there at the moment. So Gareth, you were talking about the terms of reference?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is the intent that we review the terms of reference of this committee for the next triennium. And if we review the terms of reference and that changes the role in relation to the approval of the internal audit function, then that would need to be updated and changed in the risk management policy. That is the intent.
So that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, that the risk management policy and the terms of reference, this committee are considered at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's not the motion I'm putting, because I don't want to lose the discussion that we've had today, because I think some of those things will not get put forward.
That
So
will be part
I
of the
can,
motion.
if you don't want it as I've put it, then that's fine. Just nobody seconded. You don't have to agree, and then I can do what I like down the track.
Well, that's what I was going to call for a seconder for your motion or your amendment. So we got a seconder? Your amendment fails, so we'll put the original motion. All those in favour?
Hang on. I'd just like to speak to the actual motion, because I haven't had the opportunity to do that. So-
You better get the right.
That's okay. And look, I won't take long.
But Nikki, it's got to be on what we've already discussed. It can't be anything new.
Sorry, I'm speaking to the original motion because you're about to put it, correct?
Yes.
So I get 5 minutes technically on that, although I won't take that long.
Yes, you do.
So look, my concern with the model is that that third line is not as independent as it should be, and we've raised some concerns today, and yet we're still going ahead with approving it. And I have a real problem with that, and I think it speaks to the issues that we have with this committee and the way that it can't function as well as it should. We're putting something to a council, we're saying, you know, this is what we think you should approve, and yet our discussion says actually it's already not right. And there's a number of things that really should be changed, but we're just going to wait, and we're not going to make any specific recommendations. We're just going to hope that a new council receives that information. And I really struggle with that. And it sort of, you know, comes to one of the points I'd like to make, which is, you know, this third line is supposed to be the eyes and ears of governance. The only connection that the full council has to it is via the AFRC. The AFRC meets quarterly, and we're relying on matters being escalated by the chief executive, and we don't make strong recommendations. We just don't, and we're proving that right now. So look, the things that I would like to see happen, and then obviously not going ahead because the motion wasn't even seconded, but that third line needs time with governance without management in the room to achieve independence. It's really important, and that should be with the council and it should be with the AFRC, and those two governance bodies need some way of feeding into the audit program. The resourcing should be independent via the long-term plan, and that should be written in, because at the moment the line in there shows that the chief executive directs the resourcing, and it won't turn up at long-term plan time unless we make that specific. None of the operational stuff really does. the delegations, there's a spot in there where the leadership team can delegate responsibility. I disagree with that. I don't think it should. I think it can create another group to look at certain things, but the delegation shouldn't be made via this policy. And look, there's a number of other things that I'd probably have a look at, but you know, as it stands, that third line is not independent, and it is not the eyes and ears of the full council. And there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done if we're going to operate through the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee to make it work as it's supposed to. So look, for all of those reasons, I can't agree this today.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Lyle. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to put a slightly different point of view, Mr. Chair. They're very individual comments made there. You know, like was mentioned earlier, this has come a long way. I've researched the model, looked at how other areas use it. We have got independence on this committee. That's why we have made this point. If you just want to don't want to use the committee as it's formed, then like I mentioned at the workshop, we should do away with committees and go straight to council. But this has got a real function there, and the system has improved. And I believe, you know, what the point I made before, I do agree this committee maybe needs to be a bit more alert to pushing recommendations through or advising council on issues of red flags that have come up at this committee. But I think we're heading in the right direction. And yes, there are ability to review delegations and then make subsequent amendments to the policy later on. But as we progress and we get new members around the table, we've got the model in place, and it's that point then there's any issues raised by that the committee over the next the end of this period and the new training, they'll be sorted out. I am pretty confident that will happen. So that's my point of view, and I will support the recommendation.
Okay. Right, all those in favour of the motion?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just note my objection and,
Yes.
and have that recorded for the minutes?
Yeah, we'll have it recorded. Thank you. That's fine.
Thanks, Stuart.
So thank you for the debate. It was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thanks.
Yeah. Radio. We've got Bill and his team.
Paddy, I think.
Oh, sorry, I jumped.
You jumped ahead.
My apologies. Eddie. Thank you, Patty. We'll take your report as read, and if you'd like to add any further comments, and then we'll open it up for question.
Cool, thanks, Chair. Morning all. Yeah, I'll just introduce the paper. Also with me today is Alison Kelly. So Alison is our Finance Business Partner Manager, and Will Martin, and Will's our Council Senior Reporting and System Manager, and Jeremy's here as well as our CapEx Reporting Specialist. Alison's team, they produce the operating expenditure and the capital reports, and Will's team is responsible for the balance sheet, debtors analysis, and our treasury position as well. Our paper today is updating on the first 6 months of the financial performance of the council. We have taken the report as read, and the paper is for noting. Just to recap a couple of key high-level points. So within the first 6 months, council has a slightly favourable net operating expenditure position. We are forecasting by year end for this to be a 2.3 million unfavourable variance against budget. Main cost pressures are coming in within our infrastructure maintenance budgets. CapEx wise, we are forecasting spend to be at 144 million. That's 95% of the current approved budgets. Overall, our traffic light systems have green lights with the exception of an amber light within the other project grouping, and that's mainly down just to the timing of some of these projects that are taking just a little bit longer than expected. Final comment is that you would have noted that we produced a PowerPoint attachment this time round as part of the committee update. This is just a high level document. This has our key messages of financial performance as well as noting our
that was very good. Thank you.
So we're happy to take any questions or receive any feedback on the report.
Yes, Bill.
Just a couple of questions, Patty. Yeah, I really like the format of the slides. In terms of reporting, in terms of year-to-date, year-end, particularly on the CapEx side, it'd be good to get percentage spend versus percentage completion, because it's very hard to know where we sit with projects, just looking at the financials year-to-date versus the budget for the year. I mean, if we spend 75%, have we completed 75% of the work?
Yeah,
So that's just something to think about with future reporting, because it's good to know where we sit financially, but also
Forecast.
if we're lagging on completion, then that says there's an issue that's going to hit next year.
Yeah.
Um,
so that's sort of just like that earned value sort of reporting, is it? Sort of looking at the physical completion to where we are with the dollars.
Yep, and the different teams should be able to give you an assessment of where they sit in terms of spend. It could be done quarterly. And this sort of gets me into my second question around the operating forecast, the overspend and the maintenance of 4.2 million. At what point did you start getting internal signals that things were, I guess,
Wheels are coming off.
track? And is it one particular project or set of projects, and then we goes to what are the controls around that spending?
It's not really off track, but these projects cover sort of three activities. So it's roading and waste and three waters. Within it, there's sort of 3 or 4 broad areas where we're having these the cost pressures. So we for the weather events, there's one, contractual pressures. What we do with contractual pressures, there was one within the waste contract, and we brought that into council. And then there's just other operational activities coming through, like the sludge and the amount of sludge coming through also.
So there's no timing issues around that variance on maintenance?
No, not really timing, no.
Thank you.
Just, probably just worth noting, just on Bill's point, where we're endeavouring to be a little more sophisticated in looking at the flow of work, because obviously a lot of our work is seasonal. And so we don't have a linear expenditure, as you would understand, and so trying to match our expenditure profile to our seasonality of our program piece of work that the team currently have underway.
That'd be helpful. Anything else you'd like to raise, Penny?
No, I think we've covered everything.
No? I'll open it up for the question.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a couple of things. You've mentioned the key points. So just noting what I mentioned before, a lot of this goes into the court report. It's just a matter of when the questions gets asked more on the detail. Like, for example, on Lakeview, should we be waiting for the Lakeview agenda item talking about? I just want to know about the extension of time claim by the Alliance. Should that wait till the Lakeview item, or can you answer that?
Actually, no.
Just don't understand the risk there. What where we're sitting with that?
Probably best to the board answer that when you talk to the Lakeview paper.
Okay, I'll wait for
You'll pick that up then, Lyle.
Yeah, okay. What was I going to say? The other thing, can you just remind us of the process going into the end of the financial year? Because we've got all these percentages and how we're tracking. Just reminded me about the reforecast, or what process we'll go through to decide what's going to be finished and carried forward.
Yeah.
So the standard process is we'll review any projects that are ongoing in June, and sort of by the first week of July, there'll be a schedule need to be provided by Property Infrastructure or Community Services, and then passed to Catherine, and first, or us and Financial Advisory, and then Catherine, just to review and get some assurance that those projects are ongoing. So generally renewals aren't considered. It's more sort of one-off projects, unless there's some, really specific areas, reasons that they should be carried forward. But then that obviously doesn't get approved until a council meeting, usually first week of September or last week of August. But that'll get reviewed by the CE in July to sort of give that surety that it's reasonable for the project to continue through that period.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's one more final reforecast, which will go to the end of May council meeting, but it's mainly just for minor overs and unders as opposed to timing adjustments across years. Try and avoid that at that point, because it should just be dealt with through the year-end process.
Okay, but in that process, then there would also be alerted, it'll flow on from how we're tracking on some of these projects, surely. To do that unders and overs type thing. Yeah. Okay, no, thanks.
Thank you, Lon. Oh, Nikki, you've got a question?
I do. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, look, just a couple of things. One on the 2.3 OPEX deficit sort of forecast by the end of the year. And we've got a note that says subject to ongoing scrutiny. And we're getting close to the end of the year. I just wonder if we could get some more information on what that means and what areas we're looking at maybe cutting in so that we don't go over.
What's the reference?
So I think that's the reference to.
It's going to be forecast year-end, or forecasting the year-end overspend $2.3 million. I think the question is saying there's scrutiny, we know there's scrutiny. So what happens is we provide monthly updates into the ELT of where we are. That feeds into the monthly report that comes out, and obviously the quarterly report as well. To enable that reporting, Alison's team is out amongst the business and as the business partners, understanding what's going on in there, and then we feed up the high level into the ELT.
So I guess what I'm saying is that the comment in there is somewhat unhelpful because it doesn't give us any indication of what might be cut to get to zero or as close to as we can. So can the ELT in the room provide any indication of what's being looked at so that we don't run over 2.3 mil?
Well, I don't think that it's not a question of looking to cut, it's a question of trying to extract savings from other parts of the business, and that's broadly across the business, and that sits, as Paddy has said, through Alison's team and her business partners working with individual parts of the business to see what savings are there and can be tied down to try and offset some of those areas of over expenditure. So there's nothing specific in that where we're looking to cut anything. Catherine, have you got any?
Yeah, just going to say, like in the infrastructure maintenance for the emergency events. So, for example, we are still putting a claim into NZTA, even though it's unlikely. But we are still trying to chase down those co-funding when we can.
Looking at all options.
Yeah.
All options except cuts. Couple of other questions. One just around the rockfall mitigation. Just concerned that we've been through a bit of a process with the community in that area, and yet we have $600,000, which is now tagged only for design and consenting, and we have nothing, so the report says, for actually implementing rockfall mitigation, whatever that might be. Can somebody speak to how that risk is being managed? And I don't know, it's sort of raised, I don't know if this is the right place to raise it, but it's raised in this report, and it just concerns me that there is a risk there, given the work we've done to date.
So Ken's probably the best one to.
So are we, sorry, just before Ken gets up, I just want to understand whether that's specific or generically relating to the work we're doing on rockfall hazards, as opposed to specifically dealing with the Ben Lomond site.
This is sort of regarding the Ben Lomond site.
But there's different work streams underway. So can you just confirm what your question is about, Councillor Manning?
I'm just concerned that it's indicated that the money is now only for design and consenting, and it implies that it was to cover putting something in place to mitigate the risk of rockfall. So I'm just concerned why.
So you haven't clarified whether you're talking specifically about responding to the Rivers Lane and Ben Lomond issues, or generically?
That's up to staff, because I'm responding to the comment in the report.
Can I just look at that? Can you direct me to that, please?
Page, Nikki?
Sorry, I haven't got a page. Oh no, I do. Point 36, page 60.
Page 50.
60.
Oh, 60. No.
Okay.
Paragraph 36.
So, all right, so perhaps Ken, in terms of that specific piece of work in the parks and reserves area, which is largely to do with the enlowment, perhaps if you could just comment.
Yes, through you, Chair. So that piece of work, as you rightly pointed out, councillor, only had a designated budget line for the actual works of scoping the plan and getting the consent. And at which stage we would need to inform council what the next steps are, what the mitigation is and what the remediation works are for the area, which is in Board Road.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I had one more question.
Yes.
It's to do with, para 46, page 61. Just a total decrease of 9.7 million in net assets compared to December. Now, I'm just trying to understand if that's still relevant. I mean, I understood we had a whole lot more assets just handed over, as I think Catherine mentioned at a workshop in Wallach the other day. That's what I'm just going to check. Have we still, has that position changed? And what impact that has?
Refer to that attachment there. So I don't know what page it is. There's a breakdown there of that 9.7. That just goes over the numbers within that. So it covers borrowings and our increases with capitalisations and a couple of other line items as well. So it's looking at the whole balance sheet. So all of our assets and our borrowing position and where we are with cash on hand as well.
Yeah, it was just a comment you made the other day about we suddenly had a whole lot of assets vested.
Yes,
And I wonder if that impacted on that summary.
Yeah. So that vested assets will
Has it been taken into account already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it will come through at the end of June.
Okay.
Yeah.
But presumably, at the end of this June, we'll log a whole lot of new vested assets into the system. So we are continuing to grow the asset base of the organisation.
right. And there'll be depreciation charge.
And there'll be depreciation off that
Yes.
and the cost of borrowings and those sorts of things. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, any further questions? If not, can I have someone move that the report be received? Noted. Thank you, Heath. I'll second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Thank you for that, Eddie and the team.
Thank you.
So Ellen, going to join us.
Alan's also.
That one?
Yeah, and Katie. John.
John. Yep. Welcome.
Through the chair, maybe I'd just like to introduce three pertinent points from the report.
Yes.
First, contractor incidents reduced over the reporting period, November through January. This was to be expected as projects closed down for the holidays in December and do not restart until the third week of January. Secondly, there was one employee lost time injury over the reporting period. This has led to a decrease in the lost time injury frequency rate and the total recordable incident frequency rate to 6.85, which is below the KPI of 9. And third, there was continued high level of engagement for the organisation's wellbeing initiatives. A series of customised team workshops on resilience were particularly well received, especially in the run-up to the December holiday period that can be a challenging time for many officers.
Just to reinforce other things I'm involved in, contractors are a constant problem with health and safety. So always trying to cut corners and employees doing stupid things is highlighted here. So just emphasise that it needs plenty of oversight.
And just in case, just for completeness, when John says that our lost time and total recorded time are below the figure, below is good.
Yes.
We want to be within the figure we've set.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's positive.
Yeah, it's very, and it is a rolling average, so it takes a while. Once you've had a small spike, it tends to push the rolling average up. But it takes some consistent sort of reductions before the rolling average starts to come down again. We've seen it come down below and to within compliance with our operating targets.
It goes really good. Bill.
So just to go Chair's comments, running a work safe fact. That's right, yes. That is an issue for a lot of PCBUs. I guess the question is there a pattern? And most of the people that are going through having these incidents or accidents, one-man bands or one-woman bands, or are they bigger companies? Because I think zeroing in on, if there's a particular type of subcontractor that's, a one-man band, or then it's easy to actually target them in terms of, as you sort of bringing them on to do contracts, showing that they've got their own policies in place to actually manage different types of risk. So I don't know what the answer is. We profile the contractors or subcontractors that have these accidents.
And where we can help too, Bill.
Through the chair, can I ask maybe Katie can follow up on that?
Absolutely, through the chair. So we have a really effective contract management system in place, and we do observe the trends. Something that we really support and align into site-wise pre-qualification, and we score really highly on that. I think it's above 92%, something like that. So I think to your question, it depends on the site activities that we've got, because some of the larger contractors, they have higher risk activities and more activities on the site. So it just depends what work has been undertaken at the time. So it can vary from month to month, to your question.
I might add, I think perhaps to your point, Bill, I mean, so some of the issues I think often relate to subcontractors within larger contracting agencies. So, and that's often where, in some of the respects, some of the line of sight does get a little bit murky. But again, our expectation on our principal contractors is, as Katie's outlined, and making sure that they take those responsibilities and those obligations to their subbies really, really strongly. And you'll see the one that was reported in here was effectively a subcontractor to another contractor.
Yes. Lisa.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for your report, everybody. I've just got a couple of queries. First one around the whooping cough vaccine sort of flag and things. Do we flag things? I'm just a bit concerned. We just have such a global population here. I'm concerned about falling rates of measles and things like that as well. Do we sort of keep a generic encouragement campaign? Yeah, if you could speak to that. I'll give you my other couple of questions as well, because they're sort of all along the same.
First one's a good suggestion.
First one? Yeah.
Support that.
Yeah, whether we offer flu vaccines in any sort of program over the winter or anything like that.
Through the chair, absolutely. We have a really robust health monitoring system. So my colleague Nicola, she organises all of the flu vaccinations for the organisation, and we whenever we have a public health notice, and there was one, I think, in November time, end of November time, for the whooping cough. So it's just for good awareness for people. It's my understanding, I believe, the first case in New Zealand of whooping cough was actually Monica. So it's really pertinent that we did inform employees of that as well. And we absolutely encourage positive vaccinations where people feel comfortable.
Thank you. My next question was around training, and great to see training happening. I notice it's quite a catch-all, as in safety training, and that gets us into things like better business cases and things like that. Is that seen through the perspective of creating a safe and risk-free process in our organisation to capture some of those?
Through the chair, absolutely. And I think it's really important that no matter what work activity we're undertaking, that we have that risk lens, we have the health and safety lens, we have a wellbeing lens, about creating that awareness and that dialogue through that as well.
Right. And so then my question was around first aid training, as to whether we also look at any mental health first aid training in that capture.
Absolutely, through the chair. So we offer first aid training, and that includes mental health first training. We actually have some mental health training through our EAP telesupport coming up in the near future. We're making it compulsory for our people leaders to attend, and also for anyone else who was willing to attend as well.
Particularly in that first aid mental health space, like
Correct.
first response. If you have a colleague in trouble or anything like that. Yeah. Right. Okay, I'm just checking if I had any others. I think that was all.
Thank you, Lisa. Wow.
Yeah, sorry, we're getting back to the contractors, you talk about contractors management plan. You go to internal audits on lots of things. How do we make continue to confirm that the contract managers are making sure their management plans are working? We have some sort of internal check on that.
Through the chair, my colleague Nicola McKernan and Alan Thomas, they organised for an external auditor through SiteSafe to audit different sites, which includes contractors and any subcontractors that may be working on the site. For example, I had one last Wednesday, so that's just part of our auditing programme that we have just for our quality assurance, and they then do a follow-up report for us as well. And then we have actions for the contract managers.
So is that a scheduled program or is it a random thing?
Correct, it's a scheduled programme, and so we have regular audits that we undertake each quarter and sometimes monthly.
Okay. Second question, do we have random drug testing within QLDC?
We have through the chair, we have a drug and alcohol policy. So we have some trigger points if there is drug and alcohol testing required. So that is something that we have as a policy here.
Okay, I've just been involved where something at a work site where something a van turns up, you don't, and the next thing you've got to go and get the sample. That's totally random, but totally unexpected. You don't have any of that.
So you, through the chair, you're referring to employees or for contractors?
Well, both. Contractors normally do, but I'm talking about employees.
Employees. So for employees, we have options where it can be on site, or it could be where we go to the site for TDA.
Okay.
So we've got that in employment contracts.
We have a policy for that.
Good.
And then over on the wellbeing thing, you've got other things. As from the engagement surveys, is that how you actually assess the overarching morale of the organisation? Is there any way to measure that?
Through the chair, we actually have our wellbeing survey and also an engagement survey. So we have the engagement survey that's actually live at the moment. Our wellbeing survey was at the end of last year. So we had really good engagement, about 64%, and we scored really highly. I think it was like 4.41 for our wellbeing, which is excellent. And we have really good feedback from the wellbeing survey, and we're rolling out programs and initiatives based on the feedback and engagement survey.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Long. Okay. Yeah, you'll move. Thank you. Second the bill. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Oh, thanks. All right. Thank you. Didn't say much. Right, I've got Bill. Sorry. Okay. Another time.
Kia ora koutou, Chair and committee members. It's my pleasure this morning to present to you a quarterly update on regards to the climate and biodiversity plan. Joining me this morning, we have Talina Poole, our Resilience and Climate Action Advisor. She is co-authoring the report. Provides a high-level update on actions and progress over the last 3 months, from December through to current time. Of note is the work that is underway with regards to the development of the next climate biodiversity plan. This is cover the period from 2025 June through to 2028. Work is progressing with the support of the Climate Reference Group. Specific kind of areas of focus have included the key themes of the plan, which are bringing a focus on the accelerating transformation through partnerships, very key influence on regards to how we work with our partners in the community to influence change. We're looking at the energy sector in terms of the transformation opportunities there. And we're also placing the natural environment to the very heart of that particular plan. So looking at how all our actions support the ongoing restoration with regards to the natural environment. I'm happy to take the paper as read and questions.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, and Tim. Yeah, big the questions I've got today are sort of coming from the community, I suppose, and the big one is the energy piece around how we're going to bring about our climate and carbon zero targets and all of these things if we don't solve that energy. But the bits that they're asking is sort of also where can we have the low hanging fruit approach and go, well, what can we hit fast, and even zeroing in on things like our beam scooter trial and going, are there areas where we could be at the moment a little over-regulated and we've got interdependencies of our policies and things. Beam was an example. I've had raised some questions around our costs of waste minimisation and sustainability. Can you see any low winds where we could go, here's a way to bring about some of these initiatives without having to pull off a big energy cable in over the hill? Where are some little ones?
Through the chair, I'll attempt to respond, Councillor Guy, in regards to that. So obviously there is a continued focus on any achievable wins that we can support the community with. The current plan has a diversity of actions that do go to community, working directly with communities, supporting this information around the choices they make with regards to their home environment, the residential space as well. The current plan as well talks about the importance of integrated travel, so for regards with beam scooter trial. And there's a continuity of actions being looked at for the next plan in regards to how we support that last mile type kind of options that are part of a fully integrated transport network. Obviously, council has a variety of, I guess, opportunity but challenges associated with an integrated transport network. Working with the RC, some of the larger planning activities that are underway and the opportunities associated with mass transport. It is very important that we are focusing on the community as well. Now, an example of that is the Aotearoa Bike Challenge, working collaboratively with local partners to promote that particular program. It's of note that Queenstown has been in the lead with regards to, I guess, the levels of cycling and kilometres travelled throughout the last month. And so initiatives like that where we are working directly with communities and local organisations to support choices around active transport, as well as looking at those larger, I guess, long-term investments that can enable significant emission saving. That's, I guess, the broad scope of what we're trying to do to support.
I've just got one sort of follow-up question on that. I suppose is around e-vehicle charging. Community concern is that it's kind of fallen in a bit of a hole and they don't know where funding sits, where government perspective sits, where our position sits. There's communities waiting on e-vehicle charging installation. They're asking, is it the bigger energy picture that we just don't have enough juice here? Like, can you speak to that a little bit?
I can speak to that. Yes, yes, the promise of 10,000 electric EV chargers around the country still remains out there as a central government priority. We know that in the last national emissions plan, EV charging was the kind of bedrock cornerstone action for the government's investment planning. At a local level, we have discussed and looked at the options we do have with regards to council land and enabling, I guess, an approach in partnership with EV charging companies to see where is the best options available. There's a few considerations that have to go into in terms of utilising that space. And there is a piece of work that has been looked at with regards to expressions of interest to the market around potential EV charging infrastructure on council land. So that's a small part, I guess, of an overall EV charging network. It represents the levers that we have available to us in regards to what's within our areas. But we are closely monitoring the developments that are happening through ECA and also the central government in terms of the deployment of a more intensive rollout of EV charging. I can also speak, I guess, to the question of the amount of juice that's available. And so there is a significant amount of focus at the moment in regards to the future energy planning for the district. With Transpower leading a piece of work around looking at the peak energy consumption and forecasting for the district. So I guess I won't speak too much in detail to this, but I can assure the public community that focus on future energy needs is very much at the forefront of planning at the moment. And the variety of, I guess, decarbonisation models, looking at what future energy use will be, have been incorporated into that model.
And perhaps to add to that, I mean, obviously energy was a key, one of the platforms of our regional plan, but so we see long-term energy resilience and increased energy supply as a key cornerstone part of the district's future.
Thanks, Chair. Probably two questions. One is, I guess, one noting that there's been an increase in LPG emissions and there's a plan to address that. So I guess for the committee, it's something to focus on over the next 12, 18 months to see that it's dealt with in terms of whatever's proposed with, our aquatic facilities. Second one's a more general question, and that relates to Three Waters. Before Three Waters came within the ambit of this council, I presume we didn't count any emissions related to Three Water projects, either the building or once online. So how are you thinking about any potential carbon emissions that arise from construction of different infrastructure for Three Waters, and thought about what the ongoing emission impact would be? And maybe too soon to do that. And if you haven't done that, when will you look at how you think about that impact? Because in terms of us getting to zero, taking on Three Waters may make it more stretchy.
Yes, happy to respond through the chair. Yes, I guess wastewater emissions is a challenging area. We are currently accounting for all of our emissions through the Toitū reporting program that we are part to. It is of note that they are not part of our targets, as it's noted in the reports, largely down to the question of control, the future ownership structures. At the time we set those targets through Toitū, yes, there were different governments, and the question of future ownership of wastewater was up in the air. Still, I guess, is. And we're waiting to see over the coming months where the local water done well reforms do take us. But at the current time, with ownership over wastewater, said that the ongoing monitoring of it continues, the focus on reduction opportunities or around better efficiencies remain. We can look at how we are measuring and accounting for our wastewater emissions as well through the accuracy of our data approaches. And the question going forward, which we are happy to take to the next plan, is if ownership is retained, how we're going to adopt those targets into our planning. We are working in the space with looking at embodied emissions from our infrastructure projects. A significant piece of work was undertaken a couple of years ago to look at carbon baseline to understand how much embodied emissions were associated with infrastructure. We're keen to continue that work to build maturity around how we are incorporating the whole of life kind of very perspective on emissions from infrastructure, both operationally and embodied into the capital works program.
Tony, just wanted to add something.
Just to add to Bill's work, some of the more major capital works programs, there has been a carbon assessment of the various options included within those in that work. So there's been that sort of initial stage of understanding the carbon footprints of capital works in the major projects.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Bill, you did something? You're all done. Yeah, okay. Nikki?
Thanks. Yeah, look, I'm just going to ask you to dumb it down for me a bit. So some of the stuff that maybe that you spoke to Phil about. Just the target there, the green line. So I'm looking at page 101, the diagram, and you've got the green line target. Are you saying that that would be reevaluated if we decided to keep Three Waters in-house?
Through the chair, happy to respond. Those current targets are Scope 1 emissions, and they do not include wastewater in them at the moment. So they are looking at direct energy usage from petrol, electricity, and LPG. But it's noted in the Toitū targets that have been set, and the wastewater is excluded from that based on that question of time around ownership.
So what would happen to our Toitū certification? And the other question was, have we got it yet? Because time's passed since the report was written. I'm just wondering if we did get it, but how would this be reassessed? Like, what are the practical implications for us if we keep it Three Waters in-house?
Through the chair, so we are still waiting for the recertification. All indications are that we've passed the audits. It's just a backlog that they have on their side. There is provision to reset targets with the Toitū carbon reduced program, particularly with regards to wastewater. It's acknowledged around some of the challenges the councils face. So it's the right review point, Councillor Gladdick. We can review the inclusion of those, but it does come down to that future question of ownership and how we best structure that going forward.
Okay, and just another question around the graph. That LPG, if we do this piece around the heating at the pools, does that remove all of that?
Practically speaking, yes. The majority of our LPG usage is for the heating of the aquatic centres. There is still a small amount in some cylinders around the organisation, but the vast majority would be eliminated.
And have you worked out what the electricity component? I'm just trying to work out what the future looks like with all the changes that are coming. What would happen to if we remove, the blue chunk? What then happens to the orange chunk? Because obviously we're using electricity via the heat pump, or maybe we're not. Maybe we're going solar. I'm not sure. Have you anticipated what happens when we make the switch in terms of carbon?
Through the chair, yes, we have. There is an emissions reduction plan that does kind of outline, I guess, the savings that you'll see through the removal of LPG emissions. It does take into consideration any increase that would come from heat pumps and the electricity that will be used for them. The net savings overall is substantial. So at the moment, there's a positive outcome from that particular project with regards to our emissions profile. But the details of which are shown in the emissions reduction plan, which is shared with the committee.
Yeah. Is there do we understand yet what that program looks like? Because I know when we approved it, it wasn't set in stone what option we were going to go with in terms of solar and heat pumps and how it would pull together. How far down the track do you know? And look, it's not directly in your wheelhouse, so if you know, that's great. If you don't, that's fine.
Ask that particular question. I can take that as a follow-up. I'm not sure whether
that's okay. I can ask it outside, Bill. That's fine. And look, just one other question is around the adaptation work that's going on up at the head of the lake. Just now that there's a strategy and it hasn't been approved, and they're obviously taking feedback, but I'm just interested in how we're going to manage and govern our side of that piece of work. Has any thought been given to that, or is it already sorted?
Through the chair, one of the key recommendations of the action plan that's associated with the strategy is around a level of governance structure that would allow that program to continue. So for the reference to the group, the draft strategy has been developed as the product of approximately 5 years of technical investigation into the hazardscape in Glenorchy. And the strategy does look out with a number of areas of focus on both the assets that QLDC does own. So there is roading, Three Waters, bridge, wharf and boating facilities. So there are recommendations within that toolkit for the future, essentially, that can dovetail and fit into the investment planning going forward, Councillor Glading. So there was provision in the 30-year infrastructure strategy that long term, that the connections from the technical work and the adaptation strategy would feed into, I guess, future planning for the assets that QLDC has responsible for.
Thank you. Yes, look, I have read the strategy and I do understand that. I guess I'm just sort of drilling down a bit more into who is in the organisation going to oversee that, and when we decide, because there's no direct plan and no specific triggers, and look, the strategy is not final yet, but how is this organisation, who is going to take charge of that and lead it? And I just sort of need to understand who we're talking to about this, or is someone taking the lead? Sorry, repeating myself.
There are, through the chair, there are discussions at the moment around a steering group, Councillor Glading.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Obviously membership as well as QLDC. So we'll progress those and then have to report back.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick follow-on questions from earlier stuff, mainly around this partner with local organisations to promote active travel and public transport. We talked about the travel demand management, EV charging. So that's all, I understand too with the other organisations. Just internally though, have you got a good input, please, like Tony Pickard and on the travel demand management and sort of encouraging them to try and achieve this plan? We've got to get some work going on in some other areas.
Through the chair, happy to reply that the partnership, themes do extend very strongly into the internal organisation. So a lot of the areas that we are focused on, we support from a strategic perspective, but the operational delivery, a lot of the outcomes are driven through other areas. Council, the transport team is a good example. So working very collaboratively and closely with Tony's team, particularly Adrian Cooper, who is leading the TDM program. Support obviously with other areas such as parking strategy as well, And so those partnerships are looking to leverage, I guess, the combined resources of both the teams with a focus from our perspective, largely or very squarely in terms of supporting community behaviour change and I guess the initiatives and that can be launched.
Nice, what confidence you're keeping the pressure on. And the, what was it, the Lightfoot, I know I've got Lightfoot, they're Monica too, or they're just previously.
Through the chair, they are Whakatipu based, but they have some very strong partnerships with WOW Wanaka.
Okay, right.
There. So what we do see is a variety of programs that are targeted towards community public information and activations. Some of that resourcing and funding is shared between the two.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Radio, Noel, you'll move? Yep, I'll move, second the report, Bill, second, all those in favour?
I've got one quick comment.
I have one, sorry.
I'd also just like to congratulate the community around the leadership goal in our biodiversity plan around our Deafening Dawn chorus. Congratulations to the Southern Link Sanctuary and the partnerships with Reese Valley Station, Temple Peak Station, Earnslaw Station, Dot, Naitahu, Fulton Hogan on the successful release of 18 takahe into 18,000 hectares after 3 years of predator control, with support from so many people to achieve that outcome. And if you haven't watched that footage of the release, do so. And if you don't cry over it, then you are not worthy of the wonder of this district. So that I think is proof and pudding of what our climate and diversity plan's all about. So
well done.
cheers to everybody, but I just wanted to
And
say that before the vote.
How will they ever find each other in the 1,000 hectares?
Have you heard of Takahe Boo?
That's
They'll find each other, they'll find each other.
I may make a note to that, and thank you very much to Councillor Bly. I did have an update just yesterday that the 18 takahe are doing very well. Something like Sanctuary, it was a privilege for Tilly and I to be there on that particular day, and I must say it's one of the best days in the office that I've had. So,
I would say a lifetime memory, and
Yes.
it's thrilled to hear you were there to experience it. Yeah, great.
Thank you, Liz. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, keep up the good work. So we've got Paul joining us.
There he is.
Hello, Paul.
Yeah, good morning. How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. We'll take your report as read, and if there's any comments you have on what's on your paper, and then we'll open up for questioning.
I think the key point in terms of QLDC's obligations is the alliance package being completed in terms of all that work. The work specific to the subdivision, that's all within budget, and the claims have been settled on that. There are some outstanding claims. I think, Lyle, you brought that up in your question, to do with the ancillary works, which weren't part of the DA requirement, not an obligation of council. But I think there's some work there that I don't really know about, that Tony could probably talk to if you wanted to, on how he's looking to do that. But from my perspective, the DA administration, again, I'm getting really good support from Tony's team with Roger Davison now on the PCG, and also our internal knowledge with Brendan, getting across all the DA requirements. We've got internal legal now, helping us with that. So that's, I wouldn't say it's a BAU thing yet. Still 10 or 12 years to go on the Lakeview development, and we're still trying to reach that first milestone, which is the first settlement date. The developer's getting right into all the detail at the moment, and they're working on their building consent work. And Dean, the director of 94 Feet, will be doing a council update on Monday, on the 10th of March. So there'll be an opportunity there for councillors to talk to Dean and find out exactly where he's at on his program. But from my perspective, there's a few little loose ends that we just need to tidy up. But again, Tony and his team are really getting across it, and with the good assistance from Brendan and the internal legal team.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, I'll open it up for questions. No questions? Nikki?
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, look, first question's just around the reporting that we're getting. I looked at the appendix, which is supposed to set out the pending decisions and anticipated future decisions, and that doesn't appear to have changed for, I don't know, I've gone back for a while, a couple of years. I think the last decision was 4th of September 2023. And we never sort of have any pending decisions or anticipated future decisions, and yet when I read the report, there's plenty of them. So can you just comment on that?
Yeah, I guess what we're talking about here is decisions that the CE might make in terms of signing documents or anything like that under the DA. The report, if you remember, Nikki, is very much looking at where are we at in terms of meeting those key milestone dates at quite a high level. Not necessarily getting into sort of I mean, we've brought in some financial information in the budgets, and I think it's important to have that rigor across that. But I think the focus is meeting those milestones. So the tables that are in the report set out those milestones, and there will be key decisions to be made. For example, going through all the conditions of settlement, making sure that everything is in place and all that sort of stuff. At the moment, the developer has and there's been no indication that they're looking to amend, any of the design or anything like that would meet the threshold for a material modification or anything like that. So at this point, there's no decisions being made.
So it would be very useful if that table could be updated to cater for the kinds of decisions that we're making around settlements. So to me, there should be an anticipated or a pending decision, one or the other, around satisfaction with settlement conditions, and some detail around that, because that was the point of this. There's no point in having a table that comes to us that looks the same every time and is also never updated, so we never get some of these smaller decisions sort of being recorded. One that I'm really concerned about is around the stormwater, and at some point it must have been decided to remove the stormwater from our capital works program and to agree to co-fund the stormwater that the developer wants to put in an integrated fashion with the buildings. So that was a decision, and that was never noted as a pending decision, and it's not noted on the list of decisions made. And I'm just concerned that we're not getting the record that was required by the committee after the Lakeview review on the delegations. So I've said my piece on that, but I think we need to actually get reporting on anticipated decisions.
So can I just comment on that? So as Paul outlined, the table is very clear. It's around those decisions which are relevant to the DA for the council to make, and they are largely around the materiality and achievement of the DA conditions. This is not a table of every decision that is made at an operational level by the organisation. So we're not trying to use this, and was never intended to look at every operational decision that is made within the scope of the project and within the scope of the DA, as opposed to those which are relevant for council to make. So that's, I think, Paul's comment that there is no signal by the developer that there is any endeavour to vary from the terms of the development agreement. So anything within that development agreement is basically operationalised. And so, Nikki, just to comment on the decision around the way the stormwater management treatment was undertaken. That was taken many years ago, and that was a negotiated agreement between the P&I department and the developer, much like we would reach an agreement with the developer or any developer on small matters and particular project outcomes.
So just to that, that's not a small matter. So we had 1 million in this year's budget for that stormwater, give or take a small amount. If that goes over, which it may at this point, then we have a problem because it impacts our budgets. And so it does impact council. And I think, look, the intent of the committee is the intent of the committee when agreeing to this. So I'm not sure. I'd need to go back and have a look at what the recommendations were and what we did agree. But it does concern me that decisions like the stormwater decision, which does impact the budgets, is not considered big enough to note. So I think maybe we need to do some work around what should be considered and what should not be. And it doesn't mean, noting it on that list doesn't mean that we have input into it. It just means we're aware of, you know, the decisions coming up. And I think that's valid, given the level of delegation on this. Yeah, I can leave it at that for now and let someone else have a.
Sorry, I would just make the comment that we had the review done, the committee set the terms of reference. We've been reporting on this for a number of years now in this context, and that's been satisfactory. This is, you know, again, comes back to what is the role of management in terms of implementing the decisions, and what is the role of the committee and council in overseeing those. And there are very clear delineations in this project around what that is. And that's how we've been treating this for a number of years successfully.
Well, I think the question is governance then comfortable with it? And do we need to, again, review the delegations? Because if big decisions are getting made when we're getting close to our debt limits, those numbers matter. And so,
yes,
you know,
Paul's got a response, Nikki.
Yeah.
Look, Nikki, I think, and the committee, when we've got some facts in front of us, or let's say, for example, when the developer actually approaches us and says, hey, here's our building consent information, which I think they're about to give us in the next little while, that will start to kick a process forward, and we'll know they're actually ready to settle, and then we can report on that at that time. But at the moment, they're saying they're doing that, but we haven't actually received anything at this moment. Now, I'm not doubting that they're doing that. It's just, I think what we're trying to deal with in this report particularly is to deal with facts, what's in front of us. And yes, there may be a budget implication that may come forward in the future, Nikki, but at the moment there is no budget implication, because at the moment it's within budget, and there's no indication that it won't be. So if it looks like it will go that way, then yes, that's when we can start to report on those things and put it forward.
With respect, that's too late, because the decision's already been made not to go ahead with our $1 million works and to work with them to do what they wanted to do to integrate it. So that was a decision that they had an unknown budget implication at the time it was made, and yet it wasn't reported. So
yeah, look, I don't want to get into a back and forth on it, but just to be very clear, we approached them around this integrated solution because it was going to cost us a hell of a lot more than $1 million. So, you know, our budget is $1 million at the moment. It could have been tenfold that if we tried to do it in a different way. And that's just going on what the engineers were saying. So look, again, this is a level of detail that we probably don't need to get into, but it wasn't something that they approached us to do, and we weren't doing them a service there. It was something that made sense at the time. Again, as Mike said, that was an approach by the P&I team to the developer, as they would other developers, and there's an integration of works along the way. But I think I'm repeating what Mike said, so I'll leave it there, Chair.
well, yeah, it will be very interesting to see where it comes out, because I do remember you standing in front of us and saying we'll be paying no more than the $1 million that was in the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll move that that report's noted and received. Phil, you'll second. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Sorry, Stuart, I'm against, just because we don't have the level of detail.
And you want that noted?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, the next paper is the external audit report. So this is a management letter which sets out just just the areas that the external auditors have raised. And so management have got their comments and in answers to those various observations? So,
Morning again. Just very briefly, Chair, just to make the committee clear that this is a new report that we're bringing to the committee to give them oversight of the findings of the external auditor Deloitte. They present those to us through a management letter, and the content has been summarised here. The reason that Mariano and I across this is obviously the external audit findings to a degree inform internal audit function, but also the committee have asked us to track and report back on internal audit actions and where we're at with those. We're intending to incorporate these external audit findings into that reporting to you in future. So ultimately, Mariano is not the auditor in this case, but he is presenting those findings, and obviously we'll track them in the future for you.
okay. Any questions? If not, I'll move that we note the contents of the report. Oh, sorry, Nikki.
Sorry, yeah, look, I just did have a couple. Just wondering around, and I guess if we're not, yeah, it's external, but, and we don't have the external auditor here. Just the satisfaction around the response, and I'm just looking at the ones that have got a moderate risk rating, and specifically 2.1, 2.2 and 2.5. The management response to the recommendations is sort of along the lines of, you know, we'll investigate or we'll consider, rather than the language they've used in some of the other, for the other recommendations, which might have been, yes, we're onto it, we're doing it. So I was just concerned around those two, mostly 2.1 and 2.2, but also 2.5. And wondering, do we need some more assurance that those things will be done? I don't know what.
So Nikki, what happens with these management letters is they roll over, and if they're not fixed, it will reappear. So there's a motivation by management and our accounting teams to have all those items dealt with before the next year, and that's how.
Right. So are you saying that it's not just a recommendation, that it's because they are just recommendations, but they are moderate? So the expectation of the external auditor, I'm imagining, is that it will be implemented, but I'm just concerned that the response isn't a definite, we're getting onto it. And I don't understand how that then is reported back to us, because I have never seen a table of, this is when we reported it, this was the response, it hasn't been done.
Yeah, so
I just wouldn't want them to get lost and for us to decide not to do those things.
Nikki, it will not be lost, okay? External orders, that will be in their file, and it'll be reported on again in the next audit, and if they're not cleared, they will still be there.
So,
right, okay.
That's how it works.
To the Chair, I can just clarify, the auditors will be here in April doing their interim audit, and this will be the first thing they'll be doing.
Okay, that's great. Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. I'll move that we note the paper. All those in favour? Oh, Bill, second. All those in favour? Jerry, thank you. Okay, I'll move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the meeting, item 7, 8 and 9. Thank you everyone for their attendance.
Second.
You get a second. Thanks, Bill. All those in favour?
Aye.
Jerry, thank you.